Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew here, back for our build review show. It is Friday, March 14th of 2025, and on this show, we're bringing users builds up live on stream, giving them personalized feedback and advice about things I think they can do differently in their builds to help improve their post-contest sim ROIs and ultimately help them to build and submit stronger lineups into their contests. So we do this show once a week. We do this show every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you ever want to get signed up for a show, all you need to do is either one, post in the office hours channel, or two, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Let me know what date, what sport, and what slate you want reviewed. Has to be a slate in the past, and I can bring that up and give you my advice. So excited for today's show. We do have a full list of people to get to, so we're going to jump right in. First one up is going to be Jim. We're going to be reviewing NASCAR from this past race on Sunday, and we will be starting in the contest tab as always. So what do we see here? Contest selection looks good. Looks very good. Happy with this. Why don't we look at the Minimax where they had the most entries in any single contest? So let's go over to users, look for people who entered 24 or more entries, sort by sim ROI. All right, so highest sim ROIs in the contest, somewhere around 20%. We've been working with Jim on this a couple weeks in a row now, and we went from like negative 19% sim ROI up to positive 3%. And then it seems here we took a step back. I'm not 100% sure why at negative 24% sim ROI. So it will be pretty interesting to dive in here and kind of see what went wrong. But what do we see? So we see 49.5 average salary. We see 8 average dupes. We see 204 sim average score. So NASCAR is one of those dupe heavy sports. We do got to try and strike a balance between duplication and sim average score overall here. So what I find interesting is a couple of things, right? So like we have somebody here. I'm just going to say Mr. Texas here, who I didn't know has used SaberSim at least in the past, probably still a current SaberSim user. Let's look at their lineups, right? So like the reason I'm looking at them is because they have a similar number of entries here. Okay. So similar number of entries, but the big differences I see, right, is they have 1 average dupe. Jim has 8. They have a 211 sim average score, and Jim has 204. So it's usually okay to have a lower sim average score, but you also need to have lower dupes to kind of go along with that, right? So we need to figure out which one we want to be. Do we want to be on the higher dupe, higher sim average score side, or do we want to be on the lower dupe, lower sim average score side, right? We got to pick one. Because it's not like 204 sim average score is bad. We see 206, we see 201, we see 202. But like with the 201s, we see 2 average dupes. With the 202s, we see 3 average dupes, right? Which is lower than what we have. And then for the people with 8 average dupes, like we see 7, we see 215 sim average score. 7 dupes, we see 215. 6 dupes, we see 208. 7 dupes, we see 210. 10 dupes, we see 212. So we're missing the mark on one side of the ball or the other. We will jump into a build or the build that was used to try and figure out why. So let's go into this build. And let's see what we see. So I want to start on the projection page. So looks like default minimum and maximum salaries. 0-10 correlation, 0-10 sliders, which is good for NASCAR. No filters or rules. 1 projection adjustment to Denny Hamlin. This is a little aggressive, and it's because like almost forcing 3x exposure to him, which feels like a lot. And he's not a great play, like value wise. And then he ended up like not doing super good. Where did he go? Okay, right here. No, wait, he did do good. I was looking at his flagship. So he actually did really good. So this was like a nice call. I don't know where this came from, what research led to this, but seems like plucked a good driver here with Denny Hamlin. So that's nice. What are the highest actuals? Yeah. So they took one stand on the slate. Okay. Taking stands are totally fine. All right. So one stand here with Denny Hamlin seemed like it worked out pretty well. He hit like a 85th. Ultimately that's just like one small piece of the puzzle here. So what else do we see? So we go to autofill using rank fill. So allowing lineups to be put into more than one contest if they're the best. I think that's good. 3 uniques. Seems fine with the aggregate metrics. We have a geomean. I actually want to see the impact that these have. So let's go back to our build. Let's turn these off. Okay. So first filter is a geomean filter. Turn that on. That only gets rid of 5% of lineups. Seems fine. Second filter is a projection filter. Gets rid of a small number of lineups. And then the third one is an ROI filter. Okay, got it. I'm following here. So what I think we need to do here is be a little bit more aggressive with both of the geomean and the projection filters. Okay. So ROI filters getting rid of about 90% of the pool. That's fine. I think we need to be more aggressive with the geomean and the projection because the geomean is only getting rid of about 5% of lineups and our duplications coming in high. And then the projection's getting rid of even less than 5%. And then our projection is coming in low, right? So we're talking about, hey, we have high dupes. Hey, we have low sim average scores. Well, Jim is, accounting for it, right? But I don't think accounting for it strongly enough, right? So what I recommend is doing these to where you get 10 to 20% of your lineups in the trash. So for instance, for projection, I would probably go 10 points higher and see what happens. Okay. So 10 points higher, I guess it's the 275. Okay. Let's go even higher. Let's go 190. Okay. 400. We're really close. And then let's try 192. It's probably good. Nope. Higher. 193. Nope. Higher. We'll just say 195 even. Cool. So 195 works, right? What we just did is we just increased this filter 22 points. That is a lot, right? That is a very, very high number. And then with just this off. No, that's fine. Actually, let's do this. Which one is the ROI? Okay, so this one is ROI. There's a lot of overlap here, but either way, I like this one because we've just increased the capacity of it by or the impact of it by 22 fantasy points. So I think this one should be a lot higher. And then let's go try a geomean one. So is that 5%? Let's drop to 23 maybe. Okay, so 23 is closer to 15%. There's nothing wrong with this if we want to try that. So I always say a range, right? 10 to 20%. So here, this, I don't know what these looked like before. I forgot, but 209 average projection, pushing 210 is a lot closer to where we kind of wanted to be anyways. And I don't remember. Okay. So this can also be part of it too. And I think I missed this previously. These projection adjustments are really, really aggressive. 6 points is like a 15% fantasy point increase here to like these two drivers. It's not that they're wrong. It's just that you should two things from this, right? Number one, you should grade these like any adjustment you make, exposures, projections. You should like track those like on a sheet and just say, hey, am I right more than I'm wrong? How often am I right? You know, am I breaking even? Is this even worth it? Am I right 60% of the time? Am I right 70% of the time? You know, and then two, I probably wouldn't recommend going this strongly. I would say like 2 to 3 fantasy points, like at the most. And that will lower the impact of these. But, you know, this just has like a massive effect on what your lineups look like on the other side. And like your lineups can end up grading out well ROI wise in the pre-contest sim because we're taking into account your projections, but they're probably going to grade out really bad on the other side. And you need to be aware of that, right? Anytime you're using custom projections, adjusting projections, you know, the further you are from the SaberSim baselines, the bigger impact that's going to have. So you could either one say, you know what, this is why it's good to track, right? Like, okay, my sim ROIs might be lower, but I've done enough of these and I have enough, you know, tracking to say like I am adding value to the process. Or you could actually like look at your results from your adjustments, say, you know what, I'm actually not helping myself and maybe I'm hurting myself and maybe I need to stop doing this and, you know, figure out what the right balance there is for you. But I think this is a combination of too high projection adjustments and not enough filtering. So big things for me are like 10 to 20% adjustments on like the geo mean and projection to bring those numbers down from what we saw, and then try and make smaller projection adjustments, maybe closer to like 2 to 3 points with some of the stands that you want to take here, right? So those are the big things for me. Try those out and let me know how it goes this weekend. Also, if you can, right, try not to only play Cup Race. You know, try to play trucks, try to play Xfinity. Apply your process to 3 days of slates, and it'll just give you more opportunity to see how you're doing and analyze your process in between. Like play trucks tonight, you know, do what I'm doing, right? Like follow this same script. We kind of, you know, are showing you how to review your own lineups, right? So like play trucks tonight, review your own lineups tomorrow morning, play Xfinity, review your own lineups again, play Cup Race, right? And then, you know, if you want to circle back to the Bill O'Reilly show, like we could definitely do that. But, you know, not only am I trying to give you advice, I'm trying to show you guys how to analyze your own lineups, and you can continue to do this every single day, right? Because we only do this show once a week. So that's what I would recommend here as far as adjustments to make. So give those a shot and let me know how to go. Or let me know how they go. Yeah. All right. Next person up, we are going to be reviewing NBA on DraftKings from Sunday as well. So this will be another 3-9 slate here. So why don't we get over to the main slate from this day? And we will get this up. All right. So let's get this up. We're going to start in the contest tab as always. So only 4 entries here, which is fine, right? They're entering 1 into the big slate, I think. Oh, no, wait. This is just like the default contest sim. So they have 4 entries here, 3 in the $1.20 max, and then 1 in the daily dollar. Honestly, what I would probably do is I would probably start even smaller, right? I would start with the dime times. I would start with the quarter jukebox, right? Like for the $3 that you're spending here, you can get, you know, 30 lineups instead of 3 in the dime times, right? Or you could play the quarter jukebox and get 12 entries instead of 3, right? So consider going even lower than the $1.20 max here. But either way, let's review these lineups in the $1.20 max. All right, so entries greater than or equal to 3. So good news, right? Sim ROI is high, 72%, highest sim ROIs, somewhere above like 85%. So they're really not that far here. Biggest thing that stands out to me is like this 10 average dupes. You know, this is a big number. You know what I mean? And this is a 6-game NBA slate. So based on this, right? Like I would consider starting to account for duplication on 6-game NBA slates, right? We see big numbers here. We see 6, 7, 5, 4, 10, right? Like the and it's not to say you can't dupe, but we want to start being dupe conscious because we see numbers like that's the big thing standing out to me here is the duplication. Now, let's go into the build that they used. So good news, right? They ran this build 4 minutes prior to the first game starting, so they must have nice, quick process. And then they did use one swap build the entire night. So they're late swapping, check. They're they have a quick, lean process, check. The sim ROI was good, right? Like the only thing we'd probably change is starting to account for duplication in some way, shape, or form. So what do we see here? We see a number of projection adjustments, and these are smaller. These are pushing the builder in a direction, but not being super aggressive, right? Like this is kind of what I would have liked to see, like on the NASCAR build that we were reviewing, like all these 1 to 3 points, right? Like 1.5 here, 2.2 here, 2.7 here, right? Like smaller, but not super aggressive. Sometimes what I see people do is, let's say like they think James Harden is going to do better, right? So they increase his projection and then they get no exposure to him. And they're like, okay, I'm going to go and crank this projection up even higher, right? And then that's how somebody ends up with like 6-point projection adjustments. There's 2 ways to think about this. Number one, if you really want this player in your lineup and you want them no matter what, just tell the builder that and set the minimum exposure. Just go in and set a minimum exposure for the player. If you after giving SaberSim your input, allow SaberSim to analyze it, and then if it still comes back with 0 exposure, and you kind of know, like, well, I told SaberSim I think this player is going to do better. They analyze this player compared to all the other players, and they still think this player is not a good play. Sometimes that sucks, you know what I mean? But you've done a good thing by giving the builder a more accurate input, and then you're letting it decide, what to do with that, right? So I think it's cool that they adjusted his projection. They got 0 exposure to him and they just kind of left it, right? I think that's cool. That's a sign to me that they are just trying to put the best possible projections in and letting SaberSim take over from there. So I really like that approach. It's like something I do myself, so I'm probably a little biased there. But either way, no min or max exposures. Again, a number of other projection adjustments seem like they're adding value on some way, shape, or form. I would also grade these. I think that these are good to grade. I think you should track yourself. It can get tedious, but it is worth it to know whether you're doing good or not by this. Aside from this, no changes to min or max salary. It's a little bit smaller slate. No filters or rules. We didn't see any exposure adjustments. Nothing on stack types, game stacks, or team stacks that I can see here. So let's go over. They're using autofill. They're using Saber Score. They're using uniques. They're using average projection ROI. I'm sorry, average projection aggregate metric. Using unique rank, sorting by prize pool, and then they're using 3 uniques, right? This all looks really good to me. Now, that makes sense based on the 72% sim ROI. Now, where we need to take the next step is saying, okay, we saw we had 10 average dupes. We got to do something about that, right? What I would probably start with, and I recommend starting like more hands off and then getting more hands on. Like if nothing's happening, I would probably just start with like a sum ownership filter, something super simple. Come in here and say, ownership less than X, and just try and filter out your highest 10% of some owned lineups. See how that works. Now, if that doesn't work, then you can, go more aggressive, right? Maybe you start with 10%, and then maybe it doesn't work, you try 20%. If that doesn't work, then maybe we start talking about geometric mean. But when you're starting to do these things, you don't kind of want to just jump in and like use the most aggressive thing, because you might not need it. Try like the least impactful approach first, and then add other things if it's not working. So, really good stuff overall. The only thing I would add is some ownership filter component here. And that is specifically because you, as your entries are coming in highly duplicated. Like, I don't want everybody to watch this and say, oh, I'm just going to start doing it all the time, because maybe your entries aren't coming in that duplicated, right? So it's always based on like your individual results. That's why this show is like highly personalized. It could be a good idea for other users, but you should spend time reviewing your lineups and then determining, hey, do I need this or not? So that's my overall advice here. Word of caution. But overall, really good stuff. Happy with it. All right. Next person up is going to be Kevin, and we're going to be going back to NASCAR here. So this is always cool. Get to review multiple users for the same slate. All right. Oh, you know what? I think I talked to Kevin. And so we're actually going to skip Kevin here on NASCAR. We're going to try one other thing real quick, just to be sure. And let's go back to the 6th. Let's go to golf. I think Kevin signed up, but then we decided to circle back on it. Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so we're going to circle back on Kevin at a later time. And we're going to go down to, interestingly enough, another Kevin. But this person we're going to be reviewing. All right, so let me get there. March 13th, NBA. All right, so this one is definitely good. So let's get this up on the screen. All right, and let's go to the contest tab. All right, so contest selection looks good, right? Starting out small here, quarter jukebox, mini max. I would have rather seen this user max out the quarter jukebox first and then put entries into the 50-cent mini max. It kind of probably would have gotten them more lineups that way. You know what I mean? So consider making that small change. Like I recommend going into your lobby and sorting lowest entry fee to highest. Start with the dime times, hit the quarter, and then hit the 50-cent mini max. And then if you want to stop there, cool, right? If you want to continue to like the $1.20 max, cool, right? But always kind of go lowest entry fee to highest. Either way, we will review the results from the mini max here. And let's go over to lineups, users. So Nike Golf Pros, our guy here, greater than or equal. Interesting, it says 100 entries, because that seems weird considering this says 48, but maybe they added some. All right, so what do we see? So first thing, right, we see negative 48% sim ROI, highest sim ROIs. This contest seems hard. I'll say that. This seems like a low edge contest. We can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 positive sim ROI players, and the highest sim ROI is about 10%, right? So seems like a low edge contest. This is a good example of like, hey, I'm going to use flashback to decide what contest to enter and where I can get like the best bang for my buck, right? Because this lineup, this contest doesn't seem like if you needed to play this, or like if you were deciding between maxing out this contest and or playing the $4.20 max, you can go look at the sim ROIs and $4. You can also use flashback to determine which contests are best to play ROI wise too. So that's one thing here. So negative ROI isn't like uncommon here, but negative 48% is a little bit low. So what do we see? So we see 48.9 average salary, where a lot of the other lineups are using a lot of salary. So that's like the first thing, right? Like our average is kind of way down here. Second thing is 22 average dupes. This seems incredibly high for the fact that they have a 248 sim average score. So a lot of weird things going on here. One, sim average score is super low. Average dupes are high. Salary's low. The other big thing standing out to me is I don't see a late swap build. Orangutan Trade Salesman says, sorry, cut out when you were talking about contest selection. Was a $4.20 max better or worse than the mini max? We can just check, right? Like, we can check. I'll check after I get off this screen. I don't want to like have to come back, but TBD, we'll figure it out, right? But big things here is, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So two things catch my eye. Number one, these lineups were built super, super early, right? These lineups were built an hour and 45 minutes before the first game started. That is like a big red flag. Your final build should like probably be within like 10 to 20 minutes max of like the slate starting, just because more news is coming out, more lineups are getting released, players are getting ruled in or out. So if you cannot be around near lock to build lineups, I would consider not playing this slate, right? And maybe you're going to be around for the night slate. Maybe you're going to be around for a turbo, something like that, right? Maybe you're just going to play the late night showdown, right? There are still healthy contests in those lobbies. So the first thing is like when the lineups were built. And then the second thing is that it looks like they never late swap these lineups. So late swap, super important. This is probably why sim average score is so low. So we got to build our lineup sooner or closer to lock, and then we need to late swap most likely, right? So big things there. Now going back to that $4.20 max question, let's just go and look, right? We go to the $4.20 max, we go to users, we look at people who max it, and then highest sim ROI is here, right? 78%. Sorry, there's more than 15 users over 0% ROI. Like just simply based on the achievable ROIs, I would say the $4.20 max is a better contest, right? And here it's kind of interesting, right? It's a little bit the exception. You're getting less entries down, but your dollars appear to be better spent in this contest. So, $4.20 max definitely grades out better than the mini max. All right. I actually don't want to go too much further into this one because I think like we really simply just need to start with some of those adjustments. And then, okay, yeah, no, we need to talk about this. So big thing here, right? Do not sort. Well, no, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable saying this. Don't sort by highest ownership. We are playing tournaments, right? We do not want to play the highest owned lineups. I would recommend sticking with Saber Score. This is a 5-game slate, so this would have ended up being like a small slate. Let's see how many entries these contests have. Not max entries. Contest size. There we go. Contest size, the biggest one was 14,000. So I would have used Saber Score small slate 10 to 50K for the top one. And then for the second one, I would have used Saber Score small slate 1K to 10K. Okay. Stick with using Saber Score. Don't use ownership. So big things here, right? Number one, building lineups closer to lock. Number two, late swapping your lineups. Number three, not sorting by ownership and sorting by Saber Score. If you do those three things, your lineups are going to look so much different and perform so much better. So start with that. And then, we can always circle back and do another build review. But I think that those three things are going to, move the needle massively here, massively. And then follow up, dollars better spent. Great way of putting it. That makes sense. Yeah, for sure. And it's weird, right? Because you always talk about like getting more lineups down, right? But then when you look at that, it's like, this contest is just a very low edge contest, unfortunately. So we gotta, prioritize dollars over lineups in this case. But yeah, no, that was definitely a good discussion. All right. So we have one question here before we get out of here. Is using unique rank compared to unique better if you're using 3 to 4 uniques? I don't think number of uniques matter. It really just depends. Some people like to have more shots on goal, and by that they have more unique lineups, so more of a chance of one of those lineups getting to the top of their contest. Some players like, hey, these are my best lineups. Why wouldn't I want to have them in more than one contest? And then I can possibly, win more than one in a single night, right? So it's going to depend. I have a rule that I use where if I am using ROI, I use rank. And then if I am using Saber Score, I use unique rank. Okay. And the reason for that is because the Saber Scores, especially if you're playing contests of similar size, like these are very slightly different Saber Scores. But if these were both in the 10K to 50K range, which is a pretty big gap, your Saber Scores will end up being the same. So the top 20 lineups are going to be the same. So if you're using rank and Saber Score in the contest or in the same bucket, then you're going to get the exact same 20 lineups. But if you're using rank and ROI, the ROIs for every contest are different, so it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get that overlap. So with Saber Score, I like to use unique rank. With ROI, I like to use rank because although it allows for overlap, it is not always guaranteed, since every ROI is effectively a different sorting metric. So that's my rule: Saber Score, unique, ROI, rank. But that's what I do personally. So I just want to share that with you guys. All right. We are all caught up here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. It felt like a pretty good show. I enjoy doing these. I will be back tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, for our next office hours on Saturday. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.